Um, I know. Let's look at President Biden's foreign policy. The policy uh, is very brick or milky, as I may say. Um, President Biden is a wonderful person with a very experienced long career, and he was very instrumental about the policy in Africa. And one of the example was his critic of his own Secretary of State when he was a Senate. And these critics had to do with the apartheid regime in South Africa. He stood up as a strong advocate for policy change in South Africa, and he adamantly questioned the validity of the Secretary of State at the time when he was a Senate representative. And he was very crucial, very instrumental, and looking for means for improvement of the relationship and how to break down or tear down the apartheid regime in South Africa, because it was eating through the entire continent. And so when he became a vice president, well, he does extensively, especially when it concerns Africa. But now that he became a president of the United States, and he has to appoint officials who will make those vital and critical decisions. But unfortunately, I am honest, he had an incompetent officials when it comes to Africa. Let's look at crucially the Undersecretary for African Affairs. She was completely absent. With the first 2.5 years, I didn't understand whether that office of state for under the Undersecretary for African Affairs was exist at any point in time. It was completely absent. I didn't even believe that there was any department under department called African Affairs. And the leadership has definitely no sound policy. The fact is, United States gives power to its leaders to execute what is vital and essential for the United States. But unfortunately, those individuals that were appointed are incompetent to understand the value of the United States in articulating these important issues regarding the United States government. Now let's look at, and it is one thing that I want to emphasize. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, he was power manic, I don't know what I can put in that particular word. He was power, he controlled every aspect. It seems the leaders of under his jurisdiction cannot independently execute any plan without him being visibly seen what is supposed to be done. And it seems he glued on to the powers and prevents any other members within their power to have the autonomous making vital critical decisions. And that is why the policy in Africa breakdown is the first time in the United States where African policy were completely, totally disgraceful, completely mess. And that has affected the United States. There was completely no vision when it comes to African policy. And Antony Blinken collaborations or extending, he was completely, you know what I call him? He was a European Secretary of State. He cared more about the Europeans than any other part of the world. And so he completely ignored Africa completely for 2.5 years during the Biden administration. And he paid little or no attention. And there was one thing which is had to do with the Southern Cameroon, because I followed through his confirmation hearing. I wanted to understand what is his policy and what does he going to a minister when it comes to Africa. And I paid close attention to every word, every moment, and every speech he made. But unfortunately, he misdirected his State Department and grew on to power in such a way that his own staff basically are functionless. And the Southern Cameroon question, which I am particularly interested and being outspoken about, he confirmed that it will be one of his top priorities after the confirmation hearing in the US Senate, but unfortunately became the least of his priorities. And when it comes to Southern Cameroon questions, and which I am very instrumental about the liberation of Southern Cameroon. Southern Cameroon is a territory that should never have been merged with La Republique du Cameroun. It was an injustice that was carried out by the British government. It was extremely injustice that was enacted by the British government. I know many of you may be hypothetically say that the UK government, I know there was a court case that was filed in UK, and the British government argued that the case is invalid because they completed the United Nations as a mandate country or administrator of the Southern Cameroon. They terminate their mandate and hand over to the United Nations. And so I want to clarify this fact because many people have been arguing about this point that the UK government argues that they terminate their mandate in Southern Cameroon and hand over back to the United Nations, and that the United Nations is the sole deciding authority to decide what is the next move. And that is a critical point that I wanted to point it out and make distinction. First, the UK in the United Nations resolutions 1514 XV, that resolution is explicitly clear that all those territories that were under the colonial administration should be given their rightful independence. Therefore, British government in their preparatory state should immediately prepare Southern Cameroon because they have their own territory, they have a geographical boundary, they are a colony, and so they distinctively qualify under the United Nations Resolution 1514 XV regarding to the sovereignty. So the British government administrator at the time suggests or recommend that the territory should be either merged with La Republique du Cameroun or Nigeria. And the false assumption or false analysis or giving inaccurate facts that the people of Southern Cameroon were more of a sovereign and were difficult for them to stand alone as an independent nation. That is an inaccurate description that the UK government did. First of all, I wanted to clarify that the UK government were giving subvention to the Northern Territory that joined Nigeria, but the people of Southern Cameroon did not need any subvention from the British Crown or the British government because they had assets in their balance sheet more than La Republique du Cameroun. So that is a clear distinction. They have more surpluses in their balance sheet, more than the Northern State and more than La Republique du Cameroun, which is under the French colony. Let me give another analysis. In Southern Cameroon, a bank in Southern Cameroon, an individual or a business person can withdraw 500,000 CFA in Southern Cameroon Bank, but in La Republique Bank, you have to be qualified for that amount in France. That's to give the distinctive differences between the economic viability of the Southern Cameroon and the economic viability of La Republique du Cameroun. So there's a great distinction for the qualification that British government illogically argue on the Southern Cameroon case. So that is a clear distinction. And now, meeting the United Nations obligations, the UK government shouldn't have made the recommendations that the people of Southern Cameroon should either join Nigeria or join La Republique du Cameroun, despite the fact that they have a democratic institution in place which was viable and more than is the first of its kind in the entire West African region. As far as the 1950s and 60s, we have the first elected Prime Minister of Southern Cameroon, Ndele. And secondly, we have the second Prime Minister, John Gufonja, and we have the third Prime Minister, Joa. So they were clearly elected and voted by the people. In fact, La Republique du Cameroun did not even have any democratic form of institution that mirrored the image of a government. And in fact, up to the present moment, La Republique du Cameroun has not demonstrated any form of democratic institution in place. So the people of Southern Cameroon value a democratic institution and value. So why should the people of Southern Cameroon become a province in a foreign country, La Republique du Cameroun? And I mean, many of you have listened to my write-up and my stories that I have. I am making this statement clear. And I know I've talked about Steve Ballmer, the current British Prime Minister, which I have written extensively, request him to act on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon. The people of Southern Cameroon should be under a colonial territory. They deserve their independent territory. And one argues that the UK has terminated his power over Southern Cameroon and therefore they cannot do anything. No, that is illogical argument on behalf of the British government. They can. They are a permanent member of the Security Council. If they want justice for the people of Southern Cameroon, they can review and revoke the decisions of the United Nations that it was inaccurate, and apologize on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon that it was unjust fairness for the British government for inadvertently deciding that the people of Southern Cameroon should remain a colony, a partial independent. There is no way in the United Nations resolution that says that you either opted for independence by joining Nigeria or La Republique du Cameroon. That does not. The Southern Cameroon meet the criteria of the United Nations Resolution 1540 XV, which is explicitly clear on decolonization. They have a territory, they have a geographical region, they have a people. So why should they be under a foreign country, La Republique du Cameroon, and become a province from a democratic, solely government institution with the various arms, become a province in a foreign country under subjective rule? I think this makes this clarification, and I will continue to advocate for these issues. And thank you. If you got this my message, share it very widely so that they understand the background of my story. And God bless you. God bless Ambazonia. We are going to be free indeed. Have a blessed day and Happy New Year in advance.